Now let's shift our focus to Africa, just like India seems to be doing. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is on a 6-day visit to the continent. He began with a 3-day trip to Uganda and now he's in Mozambique. Mozambique is a country of about 31 million people. It's located in southeastern Africa. Jaishankar is there to foster ties. When he arrived yesterday, he was given what he calls an energetic welcome. Then he took a train ride. What's so special about this? It's a made-in-India train. This was with Mozambique's Transport Minister, Mateus Magala. They even conducted a press conference on the moving train. Jaishankar called it a novel experience. He then interacted with the Indian diaspora in the country. He spoke about historic ties between the two nations. These ties go back centuries, and they've been given a boost of late. On the economic front, there's, of course, the Made in India train that Jaishankar was on. He also virtually inaugurated a bridge in Mozambique. It's called the Buzi Bridge. It's more than 700 meters long. It was funded by an Indian line of credit. But India's Africa outreach is not just limited to development projects. There are other avenues of cooperation like defense. Last month, India hosted the first ever India-Africa Army Chiefs Conclave. 31 African nations sent their chiefs or representatives. It was a bid to both improve ties and talk about arms exports. You see, most African nations import arms and ammunition, and India is trying to become a global defense exporter. So it makes sense for India to explore this market. And this market is opening up. Presently, Africa primarily imports weapons from Russia. Russian arms made up about 40% of Africa's defense imports between 2018 and 2022. But of course, Russia is currently busy with its own war, the war in Ukraine. It may not be able to spare arms for export. So India could try and fill that gap. India reportedly exports only about 10 to 15% of its arms to Africa at the moment. New Delhi could try and increase its slice of the pie. And it may be something that appeals to African nations as well, considering the shared history. Take a look at this. Images from this morning, Jaishankar paying homage to Mozambique's freedom struggle. India and almost all African nations share a history of colonial oppression. While India shook off the British yoke in 1947, Mozambique gained independence from Portugal only in 1975. European nations exploited Africa for centuries. It was called the Scramble for Africa, and it left the continent impoverished. The effects of that scramble continue to scar Africa and to shape its present partnerships. Most former colonizers have a disproportionate presence in Africa, and it does lead to tensions. Look at what happened in Burkina Faso recently. Locals protested the French military presence in the country. France finally had to withdraw its troops in February, but not without giving a parting shot. Paris was critical of Moscow's influence in Africa. It said Russia was trying to make inroads into the continent, trying to expand its military influence. It sounds a bit too much like colonial times for comfort. Europeans bickering over who controls what in Africa. But India could offer something different. A partnership based on mutual respect. A coming together of the so-called global South, instead of nations once again becoming pawns in the great power games. That is what India is working towards, and Jaishankar's trip is another step in that direction.